You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and I watched 13 hours of non-stop playoff baseball yesterday. You'd think I'd be all baseballed out. Nope. I'm ready, baby. It's October. The lights are on bright. We're gonna find out who the clutch performers really are. Who is gonna rise to the occasion, Gio Urshela, or who's gonna choke, Brad Hand. Can you tell I'm a Yankees fan? I'm not gonna start with the Yankees game, though. I'm gonna go chronologically. So that means I'm gonna start with Reds Braves. And David Bell did a terrible job of managing this game. He was fine with what he did with his pitchers. I didn't think he did anything wrong there. At the end of the day, he kept his big guns for, the clutch situations, and they couldn't get it done. That's not on Bell. But what is on Bell is the failure to seize the moment. Top of the 12th, runners on the corners, nobody out. You have two light-hitting players due up, Kyle Farmer and Tucker Barnhart. Farmer's not terrible, but he was 0 for 4 up to that point. And Barnhart was a defensive replacement. Why wouldn't you try to bunt? Why wouldn't you try a suicide squeeze, a safety squeeze, whatever? You can't trust Kyle Farmer and Tucker Barnhart to have big hits in that situation. Force the issue. And an almost identical situation happened in the top of the 13th. You have bases loaded, 1 out. Aristides Aquino at bat. The guy hit 170 this year. He spent a lot of time at the alternate training site. I'm sure the guy knows how to bunt. He has speed. Have him put the bunt down. Alex Rodriguez was screaming for it on the broadcast, and I was right there with him. I don't care what analytics say. Sometimes you just need to use your noodle and realize that bunting is better than trusting players that are barely hitting their weight. I thought something that A-Rod said on the broadcast was actually really intelligent. And A-Rod gets a lot of heat. Some people say he tries too hard to prove how smart he is. And there are very few people on this earth that know baseball as well as Alex Rodriguez. If he got a job as president of baseball operations, or whatever his title would have been with the Mets, I think he'd do a great job. He said that when you bunt, you put the onus on the fielders to be absolutely perfect. And I'll even go further down that train of thought. When you haven't seen it in a long time, you have more of a chance of messing it up. And he was right. He was 100% right. But then the bottom of the 13th comes. Runners on the corners, 1 out. Freddie Freeman at bat. Marcell Ozuna was behind him. A lot of people got on Bell for not intentionally walking Freeman to get to Ozuna. That didn't bother me as much as the not bunting. I would have intentionally walked Freeman. At the end of the day, he's a better player than Marcell Ozuna. I think I'd have a better shot of getting Ozuna to make out than Freeman. But having said that, Ozuna was no slouch this year. He hit .338 with 18 homers, 56 RBIs. It was really pick your poison at that point for David Bell. He had to trust that Amir Garrett could get out of the situation, and he couldn't. Did I have a problem with him not intentionally walking Freeman? The answer is yes, but I had more of a problem with him not trying any kind of squeeze play to get the lead. At the end of the day, you had gone over a game without scoring. You were getting opportunities. The Reds had 11 hits. But they left 13 guys on base. They couldn't get that big hit. Force the issue with a bunt. I don't care what analytics say. Bunts work. If you're not known for your bat, I don't mind a guy like Joey Votto not knowing how to bunt. But if it's a guy like Tucker Barnhart or Kyle Farmer, he needs to know how to bunt. I don't know if they do or if they don't, but it should be in any player's repertoire who isn't a big bopper. Moving on now to Astros Twins. And it's really stunning what the Twins managed to do here. They were the better team. They finished 12 games over 500. The Astros finished 2 games under 500. The entire baseball world was rooting for the Twins. They'd lost 16 straight games in the postseason. I thought they were due. I picked them as one of my dark horses. They did nothing yesterday. They only had 3 hits. You know how many hits they had in the 2 games? 7. How do you make the playoffs year after year and not win a damn game? I mean, give Carlos Correa credit for hitting the big home run in the top of the 7th. And give Dusty Baker all the credit in the world for how he managed this game. He knew when to pull Urquidy. And then the bullpen just shut the Twins down. The bullpen pitched 4 2/3 innings. They only gave up 1 hit. Christian Javier, a no one, a schmagegi, pitches 3 innings of shutout baseball. I give Baker credit. He doesn't have a good record of pushing the right buttons in the playoffs, but he did it here. And it's going to be interesting to see if he can continue doing that against either the White Sox or the Athletics. But before I get into that game, I want to talk about Marlins Cubs. And I gotta tell ya, I was really impressed with Sandy Alcantara. his first ever playoff start. He pitches 6 2/3, gives up 1 run on 3 hits. I understand his control wasn't the greatest. He only had 4 strikeouts. He did have 3 walks. But in reality, he only made 1 bad pitch. That was to Ian Happ in the 5th inning. I'm okay with that. I mean, Kyle Hendricks pitched well too, until the 7th inning rolled around. Then the Marlins sort of kind of duplicated what they did in 03. They had 1 monster inning. I mean, when you score 5 runs in an inning in a playoff game, you're going to win that game. I will say this, I wasn't crazy about the decision to leave Kyle Hendricks in to face Corey Dickerson. Hendricks was laboring. He was in trouble. He had allowed 2 singles. I didn't hate the decision. I do like it when managers ride their starters, but having said that, you have to be able to see when your pitcher is laboring. And David Ross should know when Kyle Hendricks is laboring. He used to catch Hendricks. You know, I get wanting to ride your starter. Maybe you don't trust your bullpen that much. I mean, you saw what Jeremy Jeffress did when he came out there, but the guy did have a really good season. Was it a mistake by Ross? Yes. But it was a forgivable mistake. At the end of the day, sometimes in the playoffs, the manager is put into a position where he's damned if he does, and he's damned if he doesn't. This was one of those situations. I can't get on Ross too much. Moving on now to White Sox Athletics. And I was stunned to see Dallas Keuchel lay an egg in this game. I thought for sure that the White Sox were going to be able to close this series out. You have the experienced playoff pitcher on the mound. This is why you brought him in. But immediately, the guy laid an egg. Now, the fielding didn't help him. Terrible job by Nick Madrigal to commit that error that allowed 2 runs to score in the bottom of the first. But at the end of the day, Keuchel just wasn't that sharp. That's why the White Sox lost this game. Now, they made it interesting. Liam Hendricks came on to get the 6-out save. I thought Chris Bassett was pulled a little early. The guy was dealing. I'd have liked him to have started the 8th, but whatever. You go to Hendricks for the 6-out save. Hendricks gives up the 2-run homer to Grandal to make it 5-2. Okay, no big deal. Then the top of the 9th rolls around. Hendricks gets 2 strikeouts. And then he gives up 2 singles and a walk. It ends up loading the bases. Jake Diekman has to come in. He gives up a bases-loaded walk. Tying run in scoring position. But Diekman got Jose Abreu to ground out. I'll tell ya, I really thought Abreu was gonna do some damage in that at-bat. But he didn't. The Athletics survived. They forced a Game 3, the only AL wildcard round to go the full 3 games. It was very interesting to see how the AL series shook out. Moving on now to Blue Jays Rays. I'm not going to spend too much time on this game. It was over in the second inning. Charlie Montoya makes the stupid decision to start Hyunjin Ryu in this game as opposed to starting in game 1. You need to ride Ryu in that game. You don't have a choice. So Ryu was left out there for most of that terrible second inning for the Blue Jays. I mean, I knew that this was a stupid idea to save Ryu for game 2. I didn't think he'd lay an egg in this game. At the end of the day, would he have faltered in game 1? Probably. But we'll never know for sure. Good sweep for the Rays. Their pitching was sensational. Snell, Glasnow, Nick Anderson. Everyone who you wanted to show up, showed up. Moving on now to Cardinals-Padres. I give the Padres credit for, making this game as close as it was. They were down 4-0 after the top of the first, and 6-2 after 2.5. They ended up losing 7-4. It could have been a lot worse. But I'll tell you, the Padres are in trouble. Chris Paddock was the only guy who you could really count on in this rotation. And he laid an egg. He didn't make it out of the third inning. Dinelson Lamet and Mike Clevenger are not going to play in this series. The Padres are going to start Zach Davies today. And he's going up against Adam Wainwright. That's not good. I can't get on the Padres too much. They got bitten by the injury bug at the wrong time. That happens. That's playoff baseball. But what really impressed me was Dylan Carlson. The Cardinals have struggled to find a 4-hitter to protect Goldschmidt in the 3-hole. So Dylan Carlson starts this game in the 4 spot, and he goes 2 for 3 with 2 walks, a double, and a steal. This kid's a rookie. He's being asked to do a lot right away. And he rose to the occasion. Give him full credit. Give Yadier Molina credit for going 3 for 5. He is a future Hall of Famer. Not an upper tier Hall of Famer. It'll probably be a weak year that he gets in. There are other guys who we need to put in first. But Molina will get in. This was a good win for the Cardinals. And they're set up really well for today's game and possibly tomorrow's game. Moving on now to Yankees-Indians. And this game was a roller coaster. This game was drunk. This game was on crack. Any cliche you want to use to say this game was absolutely crazy is apt. And it even started before the game. The game was delayed 50 minutes because the radar showed rain. Then the game started with the rain absolutely pouring. Tanaka gives up 2 doubles. Then they put the tarp out onto the field. Then Tanaka comes back out. And at the end of 1, it's 4-0 Indians. I'm screaming bloody murder at this point. What the hell are you doing? You can't do that to Tanaka. You can't start the game, pause it, and then restart it like that. That was so asinine. Why wouldn't you just wait it out? If you're gonna pull the tarp off, and then you see that it's raining cats and dogs, just put the tarp back on. Don't put the players out there. That's a big injury risk. That field was not in prime condition. You saw some players slipping and sliding. But Tanaka settled down, and in the top of the fourth, Gio Urshela hits the biggest home run of his life. He hits a grand slam to make it 5-4 Yankees, one of only 3 Yankees to hit a grand slam in the postseason, Gil McDougald and Tino Martinez being the others. I'll fast forward a little bit because things got crazy. I mean, I'm probably going to miss some things. I was trying to keep track of it all. I couldn't. There was so much craziness. In the top of the 7th, the Yankees were up 8-6. The game isn't over at this point. A run an inning, and the Indians win the game. Aaron Boone does his typical late inning swap. Tyler Wade for Luke Voit. Wade slides over to second, and LeMahieu slides over because Voigt's not a great fielder. The thing is, Luke Voit was one of your best hitters this year. The game wasn't over. You can't pull Voit in that spot. Wait to pull him. I wouldn't do it until the 8th at the earliest. I don't even like the swap at all. I think Voigt's too good. I don't want to lose his bat. Zach Britton had come on in the bottom of the 6th to get out of a jam that Chad Green had gotten into. So the Yankees were really asking Britton to pitch the 7th and maybe a little bit of the 8th and then go to Chapman. That's not a good idea. I understand that Ottavino hasn't been great, but you still have to trust him. Same thing with Jonathan Holder. Why wouldn't you trust your guys? You trust a tired Zach Britton more than anyone else in the pen. But I'll give Britton a little credit. He got the first 2 guys out, but then he gave up 2 walks. Josh Naylor is due up. The hottest hitter that the Indians had. And he got pulled for Jordan Luplow. There wasn't a person alive who thought that was the right decision besides Sandy Alomar. I think I heard Terry Francona scream, "What on earth are you doing?" Britton gets pulled for a righty, except the righty isn't Ottavino, it's not Holder, it's Jonathan Loaisiga. How can you trust Loaisiga in that spot? The guy gives up a 2 RBI double. The game's tied at 8. Then the decision to pinch run Wade for Voit really came back to bite the Yankees in the butt because the Yankees had to put Clint Frazier in. Who would you rather have hitting in that spot? It's runners on the corners, 2 out at this point. Do you want Frazier in that spot, or do you want Luke Voit? I don't care if you're a Frazier fan or not. The answer is Luke Voit. Frazier puts out the worst at-bat I've ever seen. He struck out on 3 pitches. And I saw the excuse that people were making for him. Boone messed with his confidence. So that's why Frazier made out. What, do you want Boone to tuck Frazier into bed every night? And tell him that he's a good boy? This guy's a grown man. If his confidence is that easily shattered because he didn't start any of these games, he's not cut out to be a major leaguer. I got news for you. There was no excuse for that at-bat. Loaisiga starts the bottom of the 8th, gives up 2 straight walks. Aroldis Chapman comes in. It's very risky to bring a closer into a dirty inning. Closers like it when there's no one on base when they come in. You put a closer in with runners on, you're asking for trouble. And on the first pitch, Cesar Hernandez hit an RBI single to give the Indians the lead, 9-8. And there were people ripping Chapman after that. Oh, how do you give that up? You're terrible, blah, blah, blah. That was a terrible job of managing. Loaisiga never should have been out there. I truly think that if Ottavino had been out there, there would have been no need for Chapman to come in. Same thing with Jonathan Holder. You can't have Loaisiga in that spot. Loaisiga isn't that good. Chapman worked out of further trouble. He got Jose Ramirez to strike out. And then he got Carlos Santana to ground into a double play. But let me tell you, that was no routine double play. Gio Urshela made a sensational stab and an even better throw to turn that double play. Urshela had the game of his life against his old team. I guarantee you that was motivating him. I love this kid. So it's the top of the 9th. Brad Hand on to close the game out. He fails. It was amazing. He walked Stanton. Mike Tauchman pinch runs for him. Urshela hits a single. Torres hits a single. Gardner strikes out. Who cares? Gary Sanchez hits a sac fly to score. Tauchman ties the game at 9. And DJ LeMahieu, the machine, one of the greatest free agent signings in New York Yankees history. Whatever contract he gets next will not be enough. Because this guy may be the clutchest player I've ever seen. And that includes Jeter. He hits a lazy ground ball up the middle. It's in the perfect spot that it gets through into the outfield. It scores Urshela. 10-9 Yankees. And Chapman mows through the bottom of the 9th. Ball game over, Yankees win. That may have been hard to keep track of. So I'll summarize it as best I can. Aaron Boone tried very hard to lose that game. But sometimes your players are able to bail you out when you act stupid. Sometimes you can put them in bad positions and they'll just say, you know what, Skip? I'm going to win this for you. And that's what happened here. Terrible job of bullpen management. He can't do that against the Rays. And for God's sake, if you're going to pull Voit for defensive purposes, do it when you know there's not a chance in hell that his spot is going to come up in the lineup. Boone tried very hard to lose this game. Thank God for Urshela, LeMahieu, Sanchez, Chapman. Those guys bailed him out. Moving on now to Brewers-Dodgers. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. It was really over in the second inning. Brent Suter couldn't make it out of the second. He had no control whatsoever. He gave up 5 walks and 3 hits in 1 2/3. When your starter does that, you're not going to win. I mean, the Dodgers are just too good to blow that type of an opportunity. Now, I give Orlando Arcia credit for taking Walker Buehler deep. Out of all the guys to do that, I didn't think Arcia would be the one to do it, but he did. Give him credit. And the Brewers did threaten here and there. But Julio Urias, Blake Trinan, and Kenley Jansen really shut the door. Like I said yesterday, the Brewers don't have much of a chance in this series. The Dodgers are just too talented. But now it's time to preview today's 5 games. I'll start with Reds-Braves. And it's going to be really interesting to see how these two pitchers pitch under the bright lights. This is Luis Castillo's and Ian Anderson's first time pitching in the playoffs. These bright lights have a tendency to expose who has the clutch gene and who doesn't. So I'll say this, whichever offense scores first is going to win. I don't care if it's 1-0 after the first inning. Whichever team is leading after that, they're going to win. Both of these teams did not do a good job offensively yesterday. So once you get out to that lead, you're going to be able to shorten the game a little bit. At the end of the day, it's all hands on deck at this point. None of this no back-to-back stuff. If you're tired, you know what? You had the whole quarantine to rest up. And you'll have the whole offseason to rest up. Alright? If there's a small lead in like the 5th or 6th inning, look for these managers to try to shorten the game. Moving on now to Marlins Cubs. And we found out that Sandy Alcantara has that clutch gene. Sixto Sanchez needs to have a clutch gene. He's going up against a really good pitcher in Yu Darvish. A guy who had a really good year this year. He went 8-3 with a 2 ERA. In this 60-game season, 8-3 is really, really good. Now, Darvish isn't the best postseason pitcher in the world. He did not pitch well in the World Series in 2017 against the Astros, but I do trust him in this situation. If the Marlins are going to win, they're going to need Sanchez to step up and be the pitcher that we all thought he could be when he was in the Philly system. This guy was a really highly touted prospect. He has great stuff. Let's see if he can harness it under the bright lights. As for the Cubs, I think Ross will manage this game similarly. He'll look to give Darvish some rope. But more than anything, their really talented hitters are going to have to step up. Baez, Rizzo, Schwarber. These guys did nothing in the regular season. They need to step up here. It's just that simple. They're the best players on the team. If they can't step up here, the rest of the lineup isn't going to be able to pick up the slack. Moving on now to White Sox Athletics. And this game is really fascinating. We have no idea who's going to start this game. In fact, we have no idea if it's going to be a bullpen game or not. I wouldn't be surprised if the Athletics did that. They've done that before in the playoffs. It seems like Dane Dunning is going to get the start for the White Sox. That's the way it's shaking out. I like Dunning. He's been bitten by the injury bug in his young career, but he has a ton of potential. He got lit up his last couple starts, but look, he has a ton of talent. He's really the only option for the White Sox. Dylan Cease was used in relief in Game 2, so it really has to be Dunning. As for the Athletics, they could start Mike Fiers. He has playoff experience. Frankie Montez is possible, although I think it's unlikely. Sean Mania is good, but the White Sox absolutely love hitting against lefty starters. I would start Fiers if I was Bob Melvin. I don't like the bullpen game stuff. I think it just opens up a big can of worms. You're relying on everyone to have their best stuff in this one game. There's really no margin for error. That's way too risky for my blood. I'd rather Melvin started Mike Fiers and just went from there. Moving on now to Cardinals-Padres. And I really don't see how the Padres are going to win this game. They don't want to start Zach Davies here. They just have to. He's going up against a proven veteran in Adam Wainwright. A guy who we know can perform in the playoffs. He's done it his whole career. He has a 2.81 ERA in the postseason. I know this was a long time ago, but in 2006, he was incredible. And I'll never forget him striking out Carlos Beltran in the NLCS. More recently, last year he was really, really good. Somehow he went 0-1, but he pitched well that year in the playoffs. Game 3 of the NLDS against the Braves. He pitched 7 2/3 innings of shutout baseball. Game 2 of the NLCS. 7 1/3 innings of 3-run baseball. He struck out 11. Then in Game 4, he came on in relief of a completely ineffective Dakota Hudson. And he stopped the bleeding as best he could. We know that Wainwright is going to show up and pitch really well in this game. We don't know that about Davies. I think the Cardinals have it. I really, really do. The last game to talk about is Brewers-Dodgers. Do I need to say any more than the Dodgers have Kershaw starting? You know, I like Brandon Woodruff. I think he's a really good pitcher. Very underrated. But the Brewers aren't good enough to beat Kershaw. I understand that Kershaw doesn't have the best track record of postseason success. But I really think he's going to get it done here. He's too talented to not shut down this average Brewers team. This team that wouldn't have been in the playoffs if the league didn't expand the playoffs. I think the Dodgers are going to win it here. I think they're going to win it pretty handedly. Those are my two ironclad MLB picks. Cardinals and Dodgers. I'll touch on the NBA Finals a little bit. There's not much to say except, holy God, did the Lakers play amazing. Either that or the Heat just played like garbage. It was really a combination of the two. I mean, at the end of the day, the Heat aren't good enough to come back from a 17-point halftime deficit. They had a 13-point lead at one point, and then the Heat just switched off. And the Lakers turned it on. Anthony Davis took over. He had one of the best games I've ever seen him have. He dropped 34 points. He dominated on the interior. Bam was no match for him. Neither was Kelly Olynyk. And I don't want to hear any of the LeBron haters say, oh, the Heat are banged up here. This is an asterisk, blah, blah, blah. This isn't a good look for LeBron. No. Alright. It still takes skill to do what he did yesterday. He nearly had a triple-double. 25 points, 13 rebounds. He shot the ball well, so did Davis, so did the whole Lakers team. The Heat's perimeter defense was non-existent. And the Lakers did a great job on defense. They shut down those Dragic and Adebayo pick and rolls. That was textbook pick and roll defense. This is not a good sign for the Heat. Dragic and Adebayo also got banged up. Dragic has a torn plantar fascia in his left foot. God only knows if we're going to see him again. If we do, he's not going to be at 100%. And Adebayo tweaked his shoulder. He's dealt with shoulder injuries before. That's not serious. But at the end of the day, you know, the Lakers are a team that's going to look to push the issue in the post. The Heat need Adebayo at 100%. He can change the game in the low post. If he's even at 99%, that does not bode well for the Heat. I don't want to say definitively that we're on our way to seeing a rout in favor of the Lakers, but it's certainly looking that way. If the Heat don't win tomorrow, they're going to have a tough time getting back into this series. Alright, now it is time to preview Broncos-Jets. Incredibly, the Jets are the favorites in this game. The line opened up with the Broncos being 3-point favorites. At the time I'm recording this, the Jets are 1-point favorites. And you know what? I'm going to say the Jets win this thing. I understand that they're playing like garbage. Alright. No offense to speak of, no defense to speak of, I understand it. But they're going up against Brett Rippon. Alright, this is his first ever NFL start. I think Greg Williams is going to be able to confuse him. I have to think that the Jets are going to be able to win this game. For my own sanity, I have to pick the Jets. I mean, if the Jets don't win this game, Gase is gone. He doesn't even get out of the building with his job. Which plays into another issue. Chris Johnson already came out in support of Gase. He called him a brilliant offensive mind. As someone who doesn't hate Gase, I would not call him a brilliant offensive mind. So if you fire him either tomorrow or mid-season, it's not a good look. The story is going to be, you thought this guy was a brilliant offensive mind, and now, before the season's out, you fired him. If that doesn't scream clueless owner, I don't know what does. because of all that, I really think that Gase is going to look to push the issue here. I think he's going to look to be really aggressive with his play calling. You may see some of those A-gap runs that he likes, which I really don't have a problem with. Those are standard runs that every NFL team uses. You want to tell me you don't like him using it on 2nd and long? What has Sam Darnold done to prove to you that him airing it out is a better option? And if Darnold just throws checkdowns, it's a boring offense. I'm telling you, Gase can't win. I feel sorry for him, I really do. I think he sees the writing on the wall. He knows that he has to really go all out in this game. Go for broke, okay? Really. You honestly have nothing to lose. If Darnold can execute the big plays, you look good. If he can't, well, you're not long for this city anyway. As sad as that is to say, this guy's falling on the sword for a terrible judge of talent in Joe Douglas and an absolute bust in Sam Darnold. I'm not a big Manish Mehta fan, but he wrote an article for the Daily News that pretty much hit on the same points that I've been making about Douglas. So while Mehta has been harder on Gase than I would ever be, at least he acknowledges that Douglas deserves at least some of the blame for this dismal season. Now, no one wants Joe Douglas fired. That would be ridiculous. Alright, he has to be given some time to execute his vision. But he's going to need to show some results quickly. If the Jets don't make the playoffs in the next 2 or 3 years, Douglas is going to be canned. And one other note on the game itself. The Jets' offensive line is really going to have its hands full with Shelby Harris and Jarrell Casey. They've had really good seasons so far. And Bryce Callahan has been really good as the Broncos' nickel corner. It'll be interesting to see if he's matched up with Jamison Crowder. Because Crowder's going to play in this game. That's a big get for Darnold. I think he's going to be used a lot. And Chris Herndon, too. Moving on now to the massive Marlon Humphrey extension. And I don't get this at all. I like Humphrey, but on no planet is he worth almost $100 million. He got a 5-year extension worth $98.75 million. That makes him the second highest paid corner in the NFL behind just Jalen Ramsey. Now, Humphrey is solid, but he's not the second best corner in the NFL. He's not in the same universe as Jalen Ramsey. There are players who are so much better than him. Casey Hayward, Stephon Gilmore, Tre'Davious White, Xavier Howard, Denzel Ward, Bryce Callahan. This is insanity. In this young season, according to Pro Football Focus, Humphrey has a grade of 67. Last year, it was 70.5. It's good, but it's not great. This guy's getting over $19 million a year. This is an egregious overpay. I like Humphrey. I think he's a good player. In fact, if you wanted to call him really good, I'd listen to you. But I didn't like how he played against the Chiefs. Last year in the playoffs against the Titans, he laid an egg. This is a terrible overpay. The Ravens reset the cornerback market. They didn't need to. Now every corner who's at Humphrey's level is going to want $20 million a year. It should only be for guys like Ramsey and Byron Jones. Those true shutdown corners. Tre'Davious White also. This is an absolutely egregious overpay by a usually solid organization in the Ravens. You're not going to get an Instant Jets recap. I'll recap the game on tomorrow's episode of the Jacob Valk Show. Until then, I am Jacob Valk saying that I'd hate to be on a team that goes down in history with the 64 Phillies and the 67 Arabs.